Friends, in the series of our video lecture on the Constitution of India, here we have come up with the third part of the Indian Constitution, which mentions the fundamental rights which are being guaranteed by our Indian Constitution. So, in this basics lectures, we are understanding the part 3 of our Indian Constitution. Part 3 of Indian Constitution mentions about the fundamental rights. In general, from the basics, if I mention this is our Indian Constitution, it is being divided in parts, same as while we read any book, the books are being divided in chapters, right? And in the same way, the fundamental articles, we have heard about articles. The articles are divided in articles are under the part, and the Constitution of India is divided in parts, and under that part articles are being mentioned. This is the basic structure of our Indian Constitution. We have already discussed about the part 1 and part 2. Now we are seeing part 3 of our Indian Constitution, which tells about the fundamental rights which are being guaranteed by our Indian Constitution. So Article 12 and the fundamental rights are being mentioned from Article 12 to Article 35 of our Indian Constitution. And in these articles, there is total 6 fundamental rights which are being given in our Indian Constitution. That is total 6 fundamental rights we as a citizen of India have, right? Firstly, Article 12 and Article 13 gives basic definition about the fundamental rights, and Article 12 gives definition and Article 13 gives basic understanding that the state, that means the government can make laws on the by getting empowering from the constitution itself. So the state cannot make any law against the fundamental right. That means that if any government makes law against the fundamental rights and which wholly affects the fundamental rights, then it could be said as void, right? Void means it is not, it is useless. Void meaning is basically it is useless, it is not for use, then it becomes void. If any state make laws against these fundamental rights without considering these fundamental rights or which affect these fundamental rights, then that law becomes void. Article 13 tells about this, and here we are going to see the 6 fundamental rights which are being given. Firstly, right to equality, which are being mentioned from Article 14 to Article 18. What are that fundamental rights? First is equality before law. That means each and every section of the society is equal before the law. Second is Article 15, prohibition of discrimination on ground of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. That means if any person has been born in any part of India, then he or she will have the equal right as others citizens have. Now, Article 16, equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. In the government jobs, there shall be equal opportunity for each and every section of the society without discriminating. Now, Article 17, abolition of untouchability. That means the government shall make policies in order to abolish the untouchability practices which are being widely practiced in the earlier period of time, which is now somehow prevalent in our society. And in this Article 17, it is being mentioned that the government shall make policies in order to abolish the untouchability practices. Abolition of titles. This is the basically related to the casteism, and this entails that the government or any people shall not discriminate anyone on the part of titles, and if anyone discriminates on the part of titles, then it becomes the violation of fundamental rights. Now next, second, there is total 6 fundamental rights which are being given in our Indian Constitution. First we have discussed, that is right to equality, which are being mentioned from Article 14 to Article 18. Now the second fundamental right is right to freedom. which are being mentioned from Article 19 to Article 22. And what does this article, fundamental right, that is right to freedom, tells? It tells about the protection of certain rights regarding freedom of speech. That means if anyone want to legally criticize, or you can say if anyone criticizes anyone in legal ways, then it is their fundamental right to criticize anyone in the legal way without hampering anyone else's fundamental rights. That means if anyone uses his right, that is freedom of speech, to criticize in the legal manner, then it is good, legal. But if that freedom obstructs anyone from their duties or work, then it becomes illegal. Now next, protection in respect of conviction of for offenses. This tell about some IPC CRPC sections. This is somehow related, but in short, if we conclude this section, then it tells about the it basically tells about the person cannot be convicted for the violation of law which is not in force at that time. What does this mean? This means is that basically if any person is subjected to a penalty greater than what might have been inflicted under the law in force at the time of commission of that offense, right, then no person shall be prosecuted and punished for the same offense more than once, and no person accused of any offense shall be compelled to be a witness against himself. We have heard many times about this point, that if anyone is being accused of any offense, then he cannot give witness against himself. This is the right given under Article 20 of our Indian Constitution of right to freedom. This is widely used by in courts. Now Article 21, this is the widely discussed article of our Indian Constitution, that is protection of life and personal liberty. That means no one can hamper any one personal right except following the law. That means if anyone has violated or committed any offense, then only he or she will be liable to be prosecuted. That means if no person shall be deprived of his or her personal liberty except following the procedure of the law. We have completed Article 20. Here Article 21A, this was being inserted after amending our constitution. This is being later on inserted in our constitution, that is right to education. As the name suggests, this is the fundamental rights given in order to educate the people of the country. Article 22, protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. This article tells basic idea about our Indian criminal procedural prospects, right? This tells about if anyone is arrested and what are its fundamental rights and what are its justifiable cases in which they can be arrested. This articles basically tells about regarding arrest and detention in certain cases after commission or which might be accused of any commission of offences. Now third, our fundamental right is right against exploitation. This is the fundamental rights which are being given against the traffic in human beings and forced labours. Earlier, there was the slave labours with. That means slave labours are those labours which don't have any rights to even to ask the wages of their own. That means if the person who employ them can give any wages and they have to accept, that are called slave labours. That means no human being or any forced or no labor shall be forced to work in their field on the prescribed. This article tells about the protection in certain cases of forced labor and human beings, traffic in human beings. There, that means no person shall be forced to do any work, and he shall also not traffic any human beings. And if anyone deprived from this section, it is the violation of fundamental right of the particular citizen of India. Prohibition of employment of children in factories, etc. This act tells about the minimum age or any criteria which are being given in our constitution in order to employ any children or any person in the factories or any mines or any places which is harmful for that particular section of the society. Now, next, our fourth fundamental right is right to freedom of religion. These are being mentioned from Article 25 to Article 28. As the freedom of religion suggests, this is more or less related to the profession, practice, and propagation of religion, and it is gives each and every citizen. If we conclude all of this section in one go, then this the fundamental right suggests that each and every sections of the society has their own can have their own fundamental understanding of the religion, and they can practice their own religion in their own way without any pressure, without influence of any section of the society. That means each and every citizen have a right to freedom of any religion which they want to practice. Now, fifth fundamental rights of our Indian constitution is cultural and educational rights. These are the rights which are being one of the educational rights which are mentioned in Article 21A, which was being later on inserted by constitutional amendment. This is more or less similarly related, but in the cultural sector there is some differences. Protection of interest of minorities. What does this mean? This is the basic understanding that the peoples from the tribes or any remote section of the society or any tribal section, they have got their some advanced right from the civil rights, right? The state shall protect their fundamental rights in that particular tribal areas. That means they can practice their practice their customs in their area without any affair of the government. That means, once again I repeat, this is little bit technical, right? So